Hey guys, it's Kaylee and welcome back to Hippie in a Suit, where I talk about sustainability because I dream of a world where organizations don't require a master's degree and 10 years of experience for an entry-level post. It has been a hot minute since I've done a video on tips for getting a job at the UN, and many of you have been asking in the comments about what type of educational backgrounds and experience will land you your dream job. So today I'm going to provide a few thoughts on the types of education and experience that are most relevant to UN posts. Now this video is going to be a bit of a mix between what the data shows us, and then I'm going to also provide more anecdotal experience. I'll go through the most recent statistics about UN staff categories and what that shows us about the types of background needed, and throughout I will also share my personal experience on the types of profiles that we looked for and hired while I was at the UN. Of course, anything that is personal experience can really only be taken with a grain of salt because it's just such a huge institution and things will really vary within. But I did speak to a couple of friends who work in other UN entities just to test my assumptions and see if it was similar for them. Now, before I get going, I am thrilled to introduce you all to the sponsor of today's video, Blue Marble Jobs. If you are looking for a job in one of the large international organizations such as United Nations agencies or European Union institutions, you know that it can be very challenging to keep an eye on all of their vacancies. Many of the agencies have their own websites and there's just so much to keep track of. Blue Marble Jobs is a job board that collects those vacancies in one convenient place. Email alerts help you stay up to date with vacancies that you may be interested in without the daily effort of browsing for all those new job postings manually. You may browse and apply for vacancies completely for free, although some of the more advanced filters and features like bookmarks and email alerts are accessible only to premium subscribers. Premium membership is currently on sale for only $9.95 per year. That's $40 in savings for a limited time only, and you can see the link in the description box below for more info on that. Thank you to Blue Marble Jobs for sponsoring this video. Now let's dive in. The United Nations employs 116,388 people all over the world. Now the caveat here is that number is just staff. I couldn't find statistics on consultants and interns, so the number of people actually working in the organization is quite a lot higher. Now this staff number is broken down into four main categories that are really helpful in understanding the types of profiles that the UN is looking for. Professional positions are for people with specific professional qualifications in fields related to the work of the UN. This can be in administration, economics, information systems, finance, language, legal, library, public information, social development, or statistics. There are two categories of professionals that further break down this overall category. International professionals are staff which require international recruitment, and they make up 35% of the total workforce. National professionals are staff obtained through local recruitment, and they're 14% of the workforce. Another category is the field service, and these are staff that aid in delivery of field operations and include staff that work in political affairs, legal affairs, human rights, election monitoring, humanitarian assistance, public information, general administration, procurement, logistics, civil engineering, and electronic data. The field service is the smallest category and makes up only 3% of the UN workforce worldwide. The general service category, on the other hand, is the largest category, and it includes jobs like administration, secretarial or clerical support, trade jobs such as electricians or drivers, security, and building management. This group actually makes up 48% of the total workforce. There are actually a lot more statistics I could dive into here, but for the purposes of this video, we're focused on the types of experience or education needed. So I think the categories tell us everything we need to know. I'm going to save all the statistics and do another video on things like gender, age, nationalities, and hiring locations of UN staff because it's really quite fascinating and can tell us a lot about the composition of the organization. Now, if we go back to those four major categories I mentioned, international professional, national professional, field service, and general service, you'll see that there are a wide range of types of roles that are hired within them, and therefore a variety of educational and experiential backgrounds that are also sought after. For all professional staff, it is good to assume that you will need at least a master's degree and some sort of relevant experience to land one of those roles. It is extremely rare to be hired with only a bachelor's or right out of university. Of course, all job posts will specify, so you won't be totally in the dark on what might be a good fit, but remember, the UN doesn't mess around when it comes to requirements in a job post. So if it says 5 years experience, it really means 5 years experience. Now let's start by zooming in on the education side. I tend to find most UN positions hire individuals with more of a social science background as opposed to a technical science or engineering background. Now calm down, that's not me saying that there are zero roles for people with more technical skills. As I said, this is a huge institution with over 100,000 people working in it, so there's likely to be a little bit of everything, but I'm speaking more to general trends here. Some of the common bachelor degrees that I've noticed while working at the UN are international relations, political science, economics, law, history, sociology, and communications, that sort of thing. I myself have a Bachelor of Commerce, and I have found it relatively rare to meet other people with more of a business-focused background. In fact, there were definitely times when I felt like I was the only one in the office who hadn't studied international relations formally, and I kind of cursed my 18-year-old self who was totally lost when picking a major for what she chose. However, I am finding that it is becoming more and more common to see business backgrounds as the UN is exploring more private sector partnerships and areas of work like the Global Compact, the UNEP Finance Initiative, the UNDP Private Sector Hub, etc. Another educational background that I have been seeing more of in recent years is related to technology, computer science, information management, innovation, and data science. As I'm sure you can imagine, integrating technology and information systems into the work of the UN is increasingly important this day and age. So these roles are being hired for more and more often. If we swing to master's degrees, of course, there is so much more ability to focus in on specific topics in a master's. So this is where we will often see people standing out by getting a lot more specialization in areas that the UN works, like human rights, peace, security, international development, environment, statistics, public policy, urban planning, journalism, social innovation, governance, anthropology, linguistics, diplomacy, humanitarian action, medicine. I mean, the list could really go on and on here. So when choosing what masters you want to pursue, so much depends on the type of work that you really want to do. An entity like the World Health Organization, for example, is really going to favor people with medical or health systems backgrounds, whereas an entity like the High Commission for Human Rights will favor those with more of a legal or human rights background. This is why I think it's an extremely good idea to know what field you do want to work in before you get your master's so that you can position yourself correctly when choosing what master's you get. I do think it's worth pointing out that a large percentage of the UN workforce is also that general services category, and this is more administration of the organization and conference or building management. So if you're less interested in the technical substance of the UN and more interested in kind of its bureaucratic functions, there is a lot of opportunity as well. Having said that, it is very difficult to switch from the general service into the professional service. So if you're thinking, hey, I'll get my foot in the door as an administrative assistant and then I'll move into policy analysis or something, this is really not a good strategy. You would be much better off focusing your attention on getting your foot in the professional service through an internship and then working your way into a consultancy and maybe a staff position after that. So I think that kind of wraps up the education side. Now, if we shift over to experience that is useful, again, so much depends on the specific post, but there are 3 types of experience that I think really are standouts in the UN system generally. The first is fieldwork. What I mean by fieldwork is some sort of experience working in a country or a context that is very different from the one you grew up in. So this is generally seen as working in a fragile, developing, or emerging country if you're from a developed country. For example, I know a lot of people in the UN who did the Peace Corps program in the United States. That's just one example. I don't want to be too cliche here because I think a lot of people see these labels around developing and developed countries as harmful, but the reality is that countries are at different levels of development. So when we talk about fieldwork, we're usually talking about that sort of experience. However, it doesn't always have to be in a different country. It can also be working in a different context within your own country. An example I can give here is that I hired an American who had started a social enterprise working with Indigenous people to bring their handiworks to market. So this was still in the US, but it was with a population who is marginalized and therefore showed an understanding of how to enhance economic opportunity in collaboration with that group. For someone who comes from a developing country or context, this upbringing is very relevant experience in and of itself. So it can be very valuable when paired with an experience in a developed country like university abroad or an internship. Or you can aim to be hired as a national professional in your own country. The second experience is government or policy work. The UN at its core is a group of member countries, so having experience working within a government or with governments on policy development is very valuable in the UN context. I think a lot of people, myself included, see the UN as this big kind of social good entity, but ultimately it is a mechanism for cooperation amongst countries. So knowing how governments work is very helpful. The final type of experience I would bring up here is one I kind of struggled to put a label on, but I'll generally call trailblazing work. All I mean there is that it shows some sort of initiative that was taken that is unique and involves vision and pushing for change. I myself started an NGO when I was in university with two friends, and while it was really small, when I applied to the UN system, the person who hired me told me it was a differentiating factor. I think ultimately most hiring managers in the UN want people who are passionate about the work of the UN, so having something that shows initiative and mission is very valuable. Okay, so I think that's where I'm going to wrap up for today. As I said earlier, in the next month or so, I will do a video on typical profiles in the UN based on staffing statistics. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to click the subscribe button below. As always, I do a blog post that summarizes this video in writing and has links to my research and resources where you can learn more. Thank you again to Blue Marble Jobs for sponsoring this video. If you learned something, give it a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep fighting the good fight. Bye!